My son has gone missing. Nicholas Sheff, S-H-E-F-F.
There's no one by that name, sir.
There are moments that I look at him, this kid that I raised, who I thought I knew inside and out, and I wonder who he is. I thought we were close. I thought we were closer than most fathers and sons. Why?
I felt better than I ever had, so I just kept on doing it.
This isn't us. This is not who we are. My son is out there somewhere, and I don't know what he's doing. I don't know how to help him.
You can't!
I don't feel like I have a disease. This isn't like cancer. This is my choice. I put myself here.
Hello,
And welcome to the Martini Scale, where we talk movies over martinis.
and provide our perspective on what is and isn't worth watching.
We are three friends who all love film, so the goal with the show isn't to critique every detail, but to give you an honest perspective of what our experience was like when watching something.
And perhaps, more importantly, how drunk you need to be to enjoy it.
I'm Sean,
I'm Natalie.
And I'm Lena.
and we have a special guest joining us again today.
Sure do. It's me, Jahan Joe.
He's back.
Hi, Jahan.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me again.
Yay.
So for those of
It was such a pleasant experience.
It was
the
such
first
a pleasant
time.
experience. We
Oh,
wanted to have you
thanks.
back. For those that did not yet listen to the Bird Box Quiet Place episode, which you don't want to miss, so please make sure you check that out. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm an entertainment professional. I work at a major motion picture studio. I'm also a stand-up comedian.
Ooh, that's exciting.
That is exciting.
I
It
love
is.
stand-up comedy.
Me too.
Yeah.
Are you going to be funny on this episode?
We're gonna try. We're talking about one of the funniest movies of the year.
It is
so,
definitely my favorite comedy that I've seen in quite some time.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Before we get started with our episode today, do you know what time it is?
No, what
No.
time is it?
It's time for our review of the week.
Oh, nice.
Oh my gosh, look at us. doing
So
reviews.
yeah, we're getting reviews. Pretty exciting. In case you guys don't know, we talk about it like 10 times every episode, but Apple cares about reviews, ratings, and downloads. It all factors into how well our show does. So we would appreciate it if you could take a moment, open up your Apple Podcast app on your phone, or go to iTunes on your computer, look for our show, click 5 stars, and then type something nice. And if it's really nice, we're going to read it on a future episode. Cool?
Oh, that sounds nice.
Cool.
I love this.
All right. So this week, our review comes from Andrew Neal, and he says, "Pour me another one. This podcast is delightful. The episode on the favorite is, well, my favorite so far. But each episode is a compelling cocktail of insight, irreverence, and intoxication. Highly recommended, and can't wait to hear what movies they discuss next."
Oh, that's so nice.
Thank you. That's so sweet. I love
Thanks,
it.
Andrew.
So we'll be reading a review each episode. Are we excited about that?
Yeah.
Really excited.
You got to keep them coming in, otherwise we're not going to be able to do this segment.
I know.
I know.
While you're at it, please follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. You can find us over at the Martini Scale. It's really easy. Can't miss us. Natalie, what is the film we're discussing today?
We're talking about Beautiful Boy. We're attracted to the idea of seeing this movie because I think a lot of us are fans of Timothée Chalamet.
Who?
Timothée Chalamet.
Oh,
I'll take two. Thanks.
I don't
My
know who that
husband.
is.
You don't know who that is?
I'm not sure. I haven't heard of
Timothée
him.
Chalamet.
What else has he
Chalamet
done?
and Chill.
What has he done?
It's this little movie called Call Me by Your Name.
Oh, yes, I've heard of that.
We did a
Oh,
whole crazy episode on that one.
Yes.
The Love Fest.
Probably our craziest episode
Yeah,
to date.
it was a Love Fest.
All right. We are discussing Beautiful Boy today. It's a 2018 biographical drama. It was directed by Felix. Oh, fuck. Why didn't I practice this first? Can someone help me out here? What's the
I don't even know how to say
Felix Van...
Groningen? Groningen?
Groningen?
Groningen.
Groningen.
Here's some comedy.
We have started drinking, if you can't tell.
Felix Groningen.
Felix Groningen. I like
Van
that.
Groningen.
Felix Van
Van Groningen.
Then Groningen.
Felix
If you say it
VG.
like that, then it just sounds like it's supposed to
Yeah,
be.
Felix Van Groningen.
Van G.
Groningen. Felix Grand Bonogret. No.
So we have butchered his name, but it's his English language feature debut, probably for the best. The screenplay was written by Luke Davies and
Van Groningen.
Felix.
It's based on the memoirs of Beautiful Boy, A Father's Journey Through His Son's Addiction by David Sheff, and Tweak, Growing Up on Methamphetamines by Nick Sheff. It stars Steve Carell, Timothée Chalamet, Maura Tierney, and Amy Ryan, and it deals with the strained relationship between a father and his drug-addicted teenage son. Natalie, I have a feeling this is going to require a lot of alcohol, so tell us what we're drinking today.
So this isn't really have too much of a theme to do with Beautiful Boy. I just kind of was trying to come up with concepts of martinis to drink to get through this conversation about this movie. And wanted to get to a happy place. And I find that my happy place is summertime, by a beach, preferably. And maybe with like an Aperol Spritz in my hand.
Interesting.
Yeah, an Aperol
It does have a very
Spritz.
orangey.
So I made an
deliciousness.
Aperol Martini for us to drink this evening. How do we all like it?
It's delicious.
Quite
Yeah?
delicious.
Yep.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like the little orange peel.
Yeah,
in
I did a
there.
little orange twist in there.
Did you do the little rub the rim?
I did. I rubbed the rim.
She rubbed the rim.
Oh, I would say too. This is right up there with the first martini that Lena made for us in one of the. I don't remember which episode it was, but it's very strong.
Oh, yeah, it is very
So-
Oh, because I just made a straight up dirty martini.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
With
Well,
all
this is
vodka,
comparable to
no
that.
sweetness.
Yeah.
So we just want to give you guys a heads up. There will be spoilers. So if you've not seen the film yet, you should do that before you listen to this, or you should just not care because we're gonna give
about
some stuff away.
Yes.
Let's get started with some of our favorite scenes. It's kind of a weird question because I don't know if there's
Wait,
memorable scenes. I
Can
think
I
it's
ask one question that maybe we can start with?
yeah, I'd love to.
Is there something about the trailer or this particular story that made you guys want to see the movie? I guess it's what brought you into seeing this movie. Jahan,
Steve Carell in a dramatic role.
that gets you?
Interesting.
I like it. I mean, I did not see Foxcatcher.
Oh, wow, that was great.
I know. I can't remember another dramatic film that he's done. I was drawn to it. Plus, I knew it was going to be intense, and I like a good dramatic film.
Oh,
Okay. Lena?
well, Timothy Chalamet for me. I want to see him do everything, and it looked like it was going to be a very dramatic time for him, and I wanted to see that. Coming from Call Me by Your Name, which is a very happy, lovey story, this is very depressing and gets a lot of feelings going about that whole drug addiction, things that people are going through now, the relationships with your parents because of that. Just very different from that to see him do something else.
Sean?
Yeah, I agree. I think for me, obviously, Timothy Chalamet was a big draw. I would also say that we can talk about this more later. I'm not a huge fan of Steve Carell. There was something about the trailer, and Lena, I think you alluded to this in the Call Me by Your Name episode that we did, but there's something about Timothy's career trajectory that feels very Leo DiCaprio to me, and this felt to me through the trailer like it was going to be a very like Leo-esque performance, similar to like the Basketball Diaries, where he played, I think, a very similar role.
I think that was Cynthia, but I remember.
Was it
that.
Cynthia?
Yes.
Sorry. But like, yeah, so like I was really interested to see him dive into something incredibly dramatic for like the second time most people have seen him on screen, and I think that he did a really good job in this.
Yeah, definitely.
Great.
Were there particular scenes that what about you, Natalie? I'm sorry. You
Yeah.
didn't-
I definitely, this story of a father and son kind of navigating this really difficult subject is kind of interesting to me. And I am a big fan of Timothy, and really, just by the trailer, you can tell how much he puts himself into this role. And I knew that this was going to give us this sort of fly on the wall look at this life and what people are dealing with when maybe we don't have like a full view of what some of the situations are that these people are dealing with, and kind of the severity of what it looks like. I think it's so easy to throw our suggestions when we hear of situations like this and drug use and parents and styles of how to deal with this, that it's like, as an outsider, it's like, oh, well, I think you should maybe do this or try this, or maybe you're being too hard or you're being too easy. And this movie made me realize like how a look inside of how difficult all of these decisions and steps are. So I don't know, I kind of wanted to get a little bit of that view and appreciate Timothy in this role. So,
Yeah.
and I enjoy Steve Carell, so that didn't draw me to it, but, was something I was curious to see.
For me with Steve Carell, I'm rooting for him. I mean, I think that he's a talented actor. I don't happen to enjoy him particularly, but I definitely recognize his talent. And this almost got me there. I'm still waiting for him to have that like moment for me where I'm like, I fucking love Steve Carell. Yeah. This got me closer to that than anything ever has before. For me, he'll always be Michael Scott. It's hard for me to not think about that.
I was drawn to the hardcore drug usage in this movie.
We figured. That's why we invited you, actually.
I really thought of it more as an educational tool to find out how far I could really draw the line before.
Well, and you're going to be talking about
it, so.
some of your experiences later in the episode,
Absolutely.
right?
Perfect.
Cool. As he drinks his martini.
I know. I did think, I was like, is it inappropriate that we're drinking martinis through this movie
So
in
maybe should
subject
have
manner?
had like soda water or something.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, too late. Were there scenes that stood out to anyone?
I would say, I mean, it's in the trailer, and it's definitely what sold me on like Timothy playing this part. Was them in the diner having this conversation, and like the emotion that is just pouring out of Timothy in that situation, that you just feel so terrible for him. You know that this is a disease and he's not consciously making these choices. Like, I feel like he's stuck and he doesn't know how to get out of it either. And, you know, watching the parent try and help, and how frustrating that is, that you just want to be able to have an answer or a solution to help, and they're sitting right in front of you and you still can't help. It's a really powerful, hard scene to watch. And then it's closer to the end when Timothy kind of realizes that it's like, okay, I do need to ask for help. And he calls his dad after the girl overdoses and she gets taken away, and he won't help him. And it's the pain that Steve Carell is feeling in that moment, because he still doesn't even know if this is the right way to help his son, is by not giving him the help, because he's bailed him out every time. And maybe that is an answer of like, they've got to hit rock bottom and they've got to figure out how to get them out themselves. It's just so fucking hard to like figure out what is the best way out of this. So, I mean, I feel like, again, this is such a hard movie. Yeah. And it's like, they're not enjoyable scenes to see.
Yeah.
But they felt so real that I felt like those were my favorite scenes.
So what I think is really interesting is that this Oscar season, you have two films about addiction that really couldn't be more different, right? So you have A Star is Born, which that really is still the underlying theme of the movie, right? And then this. And to your point, saying like, how are they going to make that like entertaining or like enjoyable or whatever? Like, they somehow found a way to still entertain me and make a film enjoyable with A Star is Born. Whereas with this, there was nothing about this where I was like...
I think they also like romanticized addiction and A Star is Born, and wrapped up in this persona of this is just what comes along with this fame and rock star and whatever, and made that look a certain way and made it look more appealing, where this was the more like realistic, what people are actually dealing with. Yeah. And the amount of times that you have to go into rehab and...
So what you're saying is A Star is Born basically sends the wrong message to today's youth, and that's why no one should go see it, but that's a different episode.
Yeah, that's close.
Yeah, I mean, it's true.
I mean, standout scene, obviously the finale where they're both on the bench. I believe that's the last scene of the movie. And it's just painfully slow, and Timothy just begins crying, and Steve, and it's kind of like the resolution of the movie. I mean, that obviously was a very powerful Oscar-winning moment for Timothy Chalamet if he's nominated.
Yes. Well, they haven't announced nominations yet.
Golden Globes.
Yeah.
Was he nominated for Golden Globe for this?
A scene that also stuck out with me, I actually don't remember perfectly the context, but a scene that stuck out with me was Steve Carell's on the phone, and he walks outside, and I believe he's on the phone with the hospital, the mom. Oh, it's with his mom that the son is overdosed again, and he's just in such agonizing pain, but it kind of looks like he was constipated the whole time. And I think that's really just a testament of
method acting.
That's a testament of Steve Carell's dramatic acting. Is I think
he
thinks
ate
that
a
if
lot
he
of cheese?
Yeah, I think that he thinks
held it
that
all
if
in.
he looks constipated, it's the same as
Crying. Being upset.
pain or drama.
I think that's my biggest problem with Steve Carell is that like there's something about, again, Michael Scott no one else could have done that role. Like, he's perfect in it. But like when I watch him in dramatic scenes like that,
There's
feel
no emotion.
It doesn't feel genuine.
And, like,
it
even
feels
acting.
a
It feels
little
like
bit
he's
like
acting.
he's acting.
And even in his eyes, he can't show it. Like,
I think
it's
he's
not...
trying really hard.
Well, hence the
But you
anticipation.
see it, but that's what we're saying.
I know.
You see it.
I
and
say
it's-
that, but I actually am the contrarian here. I do believe that he's a strong dramatic actor. I really enjoyed him in this movie, but maybe it's because I think my own dad kind of looks like Steve Carell. So
Oh, interesting. I mean, I did believe I bought into a good amount of Steve Carell in this movie, but I do see what you're saying a little bit, where it's like, okay, it seems like you're acting, and it's not quite... Where everything from Timothy feels like it's just seeping out of his
Inside of him,
pores.
yeah.
Like, it's totally him, and it feels natural and genuine to the character. Whereas Steve still feels like he's acting in some of those situations. Some of it worked, and I think some of it did flip, but I don't think that all of it was
Now that you
seamless.
mentioned the nomination award season stuff, it's actually really fascinating to me that based on what you just said, because I agree with you, Timothy is nominated for supporting in this film, which I think is really interesting. And I'm curious to see, they'll probably do the same thing with the Oscars, but I'm pretty sure for Golden Globes, he was nominated as Best Supporting Actor.
because he
I feel
supports
like
Steve
because
Carell.
Yeah.
they're
Dramatic.
co-stars. I don't feel like...
But I think that
There's no
Steve
lead.
Carell would be nominated for lead if he
As
was
he-
nominated
as
for
he-
this film.
As he
well,
should be.
true. I do feel
But
like...
I would say Timothy...
Well, first of all, he's not going to get nominated, so...
He probably won't, but
No.
maybe just like screen time and amount of lines and stuff, it was more, I feel like it was a little bit more skewed to like
The
dad's journey to like help his son and
Yeah.
find his son, and
Yeah.
more so than it was.
Maybe. I don't know.
I do see that.
I should say that I am a casual fan of The Office, so I don't have that ingrained image of Steve Carell's character in The Office. So I feel
fair.
like I have a little bit more of an open perspective as to Steve Carell as a dramatic actor. Timothy, on the other hand, to me, I felt there was like a lot of snot. I felt like there was a lot of snot. And he's like, if I just drool and cry and snot, then
You need to
people-
watch
and
yourself
I'm
right
like,
now because you're in between two of his fan club
sure
members.
know.
So
I mean, I'm sure you guys
He
would
really
love
does
to
let it go.
lick up
But
that snot.
you have
but
to let it go. It's coming out. You can't
But-
stop and... I gotta wipe my nose now. It's just coming out.
I know, but you know.
And he probably doesn't have a lot of feeling in his face from all the drugs, so he might not feel it dripping down.
But do drug addicts like cry like that?
I don't know.
well, I
Yeah,
think they're like
like-
hysterical, and so some
Yeah.
people, and that can manifest
I guess,
itself through
yeah,
tears.
like
or-
from my experiences watching Intervention, it does
Mm-hmm.
seem like...
No, yeah, it's true.
But I
They
did
do.
watch a lot of it. Like the emotions are like an anger and sadness are like to the extreme
Yes.
level when you're on this, just from watching that.
Yes.
That's-
And so he nailed it in that sense.
It felt genuine. I don't know if like other people watch it and be like, I don't know, that's not
Do you think
how...
he watched a lot of Intervention for like prep work?
I mean, I think he did.
I think you
and
should.
I think one would think that you would want to watch
Yeah.
what
It's
the
intense.
response
Have you
is,
seen it?
and yeah.
You don't watch it?
No.
You should see it. It's
I
very
won't like
intense.
willingly subject myself to television that's like depressing people's life. I'd rather watch like
To me, it's
something
more
fake.
like an
It's
awareness of like what
interesting.
is
No, I
going
get
on
that.
in
I
people's
get that.
lives, and,
And
like
it follows
how
them, and like
yeah.
you watch them inject themselves.
Ignorance is bliss. I prefer to live in that
Oof.
state.
I
Thank
know.
you.
True.
So we talked about what worked well. What would you say did not work well in this film?
I'll go first.
Okay.
What I had a lot of trouble with in this movie was the way, I guess, timeline. I'm not sure what the right term for this would be, but the way that it was jumping back and forth between
It was a non-linear.
It was nonlinear. I had trouble sometimes following, like, at what point in the storyline was he in rehab? Was he out of rehab? Was this before the drug use? So, and maybe I just wasn't fully in, like, there because I was high. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I see what you did there.
I completely agree with you.
no,
I
I'm
feel
kidding, but-
just like on the last episode with you when we were talking about Bird Box, I kind of did follow along when they were jumping around. I don't know
I
how,
just had a little bit
but
of
this
trouble.
one I couldn't
yeah.
figure it out
Yeah.
either. I didn't know where he was, if they went back too far, if they I just couldn't figure
Well,
it
I
out.
think it was confusing
unclear.
too because there were certain moments where Timothy's character was played by like a younger kid.
Right.
And so that was like a very clear delineation between like,
Right.
okay, we're clearly in the past, right?
Right.
But then there was some like pre-college, high school, and that because Timothy didn't look any
And
different
he
in any
carried
of
the
those
same
scenes.
backpack
Yeah.
throughout all of it, so he never
Oh,
got
that's
a new
interesting. I didn't
backpack.
notice that.
So I didn't know, is he older now? Is it the same? I guess I didn't look too closely at the backpack either, if it
Yeah.
was more like used or more new. I don't know.
Because there was no like physical
Yeah.
indication
Yeah.
of the timeline, it was
No.
kind of hard
Do
to.
you
Hair's
feel?
the
Do you
same.
feel like if the story had been told linear, do you think that you would have enjoyed it more or been more attached, or what do you feel like would have been different with your experience with it?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe. I think if it was a little more linear. I mean, I like a good flashback every now and then,
Yeah.
or like the scenes with the young son, young Timothy, was very powerful. I thought, sends the message that
He was innocent once upon a time.
Yeah, and that's his little boy. But I think, there was that, like we were saying, just because it's like the timeline was maybe, I don't even know, 5 years or something. It's like not significant enough to know when.
Yeah.
It may have helped to have been a little more.
Yeah, that's a good point. When you're telling flashback stories that are not that far back in the past, it's like, is it necessary to dive into flashbacks that often? Like, I don't know, you could tell it more linearly and it could still...
Yeah, because
have
if
an
you use a
effect.
flashback to kind of explain why this is what they're talking about something, and then it goes back to that, and then you're like, okay, great, but then we're back. Like you go back and you're like, oh, fills in that gap.
I also
But
wonder
when you're
too...
jumping,
It's based on 2 books, right? That they had to
Yes.
cram in like
Yes.
a lot of story. And I also wonder like
One is written by the dad, and one is written by
by
the
the son. Interesting.
so that you're getting both perspectives in this movie in one.
But I wonder if, as a screenwriter, and I'm not one, so I can't, like, I'm not necessarily critiquing this, but is that a lazy way of storytelling when you use flashbacks to tell a story as opposed to just spreading it out? You know what I mean? Like,
I think they would argue that it's a profound way of storytelling.
Is it?
I'm not sure.
Maybe.
I think it certainly makes things more difficult because you want to make sure that you're not confusing people, and that hopefully when people are telling a story in a non-linear fashion and jumping, time, that you're not doing it just to be a creative asshole, but you're doing it because it actually helps the story. So I'm trying
Yeah.
to think of like
Right.
what the meaning is of doing these flashbacks in this movie. Is it because typically people who go to rehab and have addiction issues are going back a lot, so we're feeling the repetitiveness of this story, and that there's really no A to Z in this? I don't know. I was trying to figure out what's the benefit of this. It
Yeah.
kind of like muddies the water of this whole experience because it's so heartbreaking and terrible that it's just all, I don't know.
Yeah. No, I agree
Everything's
with you.
all over the place during this time.
I feel like it could have been shorter. Maybe it's just because it was so torturously hard to watch at times, but it just felt to me like, and again, I know it was based on 2 books, and so they had a lot of story to cram in, but I still felt that there were a lot of like repetitive moments for me. Like when I think about the movie, all I can remember is like I feel like I spent the entire movie watching Steve Carell look for him. Like that to me is like what sticks out. So I think that I don't know if they could have told it any differently, but it just felt like it was just so long, and like it was like, okay, we know this isn't going to end well. Can we just get to the end?
yeah, I do kind of wish they would have. Like, I don't know how much of the dad's book and how much of the kid's book was in it. It seemed more of the dad's book.
Yeah.
'Cause, like, it was more focused on dad, but it would be interesting. I haven't read the book. I think it's called Tweak, but to see how much more maybe in depth it got on the things that he was like going through, like when he first started doing it, like then how often and who was there, and like I don't know, just like maybe just more of the journey through that, of the beginning of that, because once you're addicted, you're addicted. But
Well, I also thought it was kind of annoying that they did like the whole like him having a joint was like his entry to drug addiction.
well, they say it's the gateway drug.
They do say that,
I
but
guess
like
I
I've
didn't.
never.
I didn't look at. It's funny that you say that. I didn't look at that as they're using this as the example of the gateway drug. I looked at it as you've got different parenting styles of people who are like, you're not allowed to drink, you're not allowed to do drugs, da 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 da. And if you're like super strict, a lot of times kids go
Sure.
the complete opposite
get
way, and
that.
that's when they go off the rails. And so my perspective of like great parenting is that the idea of like, if you're open with your kids, they're open with you, that maybe you'll have this communication with each other, that they can be honest with things that are going on in their life, honest with the things that they're experiencing, and maybe this won't be an issue that you're dealing with. Again, this is just completely my generalization of like what I think is a good way to move forward.
I don't discount that
and
at
so
all.
Me, with them showing the scene and him smoking a joint with him, was that parenting style of like, not like I'm going to be the cool dad and we're going to smoke joints all the time. It wasn't that. It was like, okay, this is something different, but I'm going to share it with you so that we can have this open line of communication.
Maybe...
And it's not this crazy, you can't do any of this stuff.
Sure.
And so it was interesting to me that it's like, wow, this is the version of parenting I've always thought was like a good way to go. And things still went fucking haywire anyway. So it's just, to me, that's what I took from the scene. I didn't take it as that was a gateway
But if
drug.
you're going to have that scene in the film, which I have to believe served some sort of purpose, otherwise they would have cut it, right? Maybe have Steve Carell's character then in that moment be like, have some sort of look or have some sort of awareness of like, is this a bad decision? Like I just felt like it was just like another scene in the movie. Like I don't know.
I
what the
felt like he
intention
was like questioning whether or not he should be doing this with him, and I think he
really,
kind of
though? I didn't. Get
and then
that.
he gave in because he was resisted at first, and then kind of gave into it a little bit. So I think, to me, I think that was the message I took from it, was that versus that it's a gateway drug, and also I think. And now that I'm thinking about this other scene, when he literally does, when Steve Carell's character does drugs, and so he's obviously smoked pot, he's done other drugs in the film now just to see what meth is like, that it's, he's not doing drugs after that, so it is kind of showing that it's like, this is, you could still probably do these things and not, that doesn't always lead to being a drug addict. The dad wasn't a drug addict, Yeah. I don't know if that makes sense, but...
No, I mean, totally.
But then did we ever get, because I agree with you, but did we ever then understand what it was about Timothy's character that ventured further, that caused him to do that?
I think that's just natural for people. There's certain people that have much more addictive personalities than other people. And then I think that there's a lot of emotional stuff that he was dealing with, and whether it was not wanting to feel anything or to be removed from the life. You've got your dad who is married to a new woman and has new kids, and you're kind of this outsider in your own home. Your mom is not anywhere around and has chosen to not raise you.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's it would be more interesting if we knew more of his story, because it's like it kind of just jumped to him being this drug addict.
And that's the point I'm trying to make.
But what else is he hiding? Like, what was he going through that makes you want to numb the pain?
And I'm sure that's in the book.
Pain?
I'm sure that's in the son's book at least, right? And we never really saw that on
they
screen.
Didn't get any of that.
You're making all these inferences, which I'm sure are true, but like I don't feel like as a spectator I saw that unfold. And so I
saw more of Steve Carell as unfolding as to more and more helpless and helpless.
And to Lena's point, I feel like we kind of just jumped in, and maybe it was the flashbacks that were confusing or whatever, but I felt like we just jumped straight to like, now he's a drug addict. Yeah. And it's like, oh.
No, totally.
Okay,
that's how I felt.
Well, maybe he didn't need any other reason other than that they all felt amazing.
Which I think he did address that. He said it felt better the best he's ever felt. Yeah.
Right.
Do you need more reason?
I don't know.
I don't know either. I drink martini, so...
I know, this martini is delicious.
It's very good.
All right, so what stood out? Is there anyone we should be watching? For me personally, I think that Maura Tierney's performance was very understated. I think I saw an interview with her doing press for this role, and she actually brought up some really cool points about how like her job is really to be the step-parent.
Right.
And what would a step-parent do in this situation, right? Because she wasn't the mother. And so her job was really to support the Steve Carell character as the dad, right? And kind of be there for whatever decisions he was making. And when I reflected on that, I thought like, well, she actually did a really good job of that. Like you didn't really see much of her in the movie, but like I definitely felt that she was doing her job as a step-parent.
Yeah, I totally agree, because normally I don't really think of her and I'm like, okay, she's in the movie, whatever, but that when she chased him in the car and she is also suffering because of what he's doing to her husband, to the kids, to the family, and she does feel for him, but she's even helpless, but she's like, I got to do something. And I really enjoyed that, her chasing I thought that was really good.
It was a really interesting thing in that scene because I feel like a lot of times it's easy to remove that person or not care about that person's feelings and justify it by saying, well, it's not about you, it's about Nick, it's about David, it's their story, it's the father and son story, and you're not the mother. Mm-hmm. But she's still living in it too. And so it was kind of a great moment to give her that scene to really address how she feels in the moment, because I feel like it was people probably could have glossed over it and just set it aside and not given it another thought. But the fact that like this particular, addiction affects everybody that's involved in this situation, not just like the person that's addicted and the direct parent or whatever it does trickle to a lot of family members. Mm-hmm. So it was really well done to like isolate her and her feelings in that situation.
Yeah, totally.
I think I've said situation like 20 times already.
Well, it was a situation.
Word. Yeah.
I would also say Timothy in this instance, like, obviously he was great, but I'm ready to see him in something lighter. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's necessarily on his like forthcoming schedule, but I don't want to always see him in this type of like super dramatic role. Like I need him to do like a comedy of some sort and not like Lady Bird.
Like a superhero movie just to see if he has range.
No. Well, at least in Call Me By Your Name, there was funny parts and he was dancing around and he was lighter in that. But this one he went way deep in.
Yeah. And I feel like everything he has coming out soon is like still in the same vein of like drama. Super dramatic and
So and I'm sick of it.
You're sick of it?
Kind of sick of it.
You're a really big Timothy Chalamet fan, I know.
He's okay. I think part of the
be honest, you don't like him. Let's talk about that.
He just has a lot of hype. I feel like he has a lot of hype. I think he's a strong actor.
But you think it's undeserved hype?
I don't think it's undeserved, but I think that kind of attention takes away from, like, I feel like a big draw. You guys are like, Timothy Chalamet for this movie was the draw. And I'm like, well, this is a serious movie with an intense subject matter that everyone should be watching because it affects millions of people around the world.
That should be what drew us.
But one would argue though.
Timothy!
Yeah. So I don't know.
One would argue that like someone with that level of visibility giving a platform to this, like calling attention to this sort of issue. I mean, not that we need anything to call attention to it. Like it's definitely, we should be talking about it. But that could be a thing, especially kids, his age that might see this film. And I don't know. I don't think movies about drugs stop people from doing drugs. Like I never not did drugs because I saw a movie and was like, oh, that's going to affect me that way. I don't know the impact of that, but
at the end of this movie, I was like, I could use some drugs. That was heavy.
I mean, I hope it just brings more awareness to the fact of like what is possible and I don't know. It was rough.
I think it brings awareness to the fact that, like, if you know somebody going through that, it's easier for you to empathize when you see it played out on screen like this. Like, I'm fortunate enough that I haven't had to, I haven't had a direct impact. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I don't know anyone that's been in this situation, but now if I did, I think I would be able to empathize with them differently had I not seen this film. Just because I think that's the one thing about the characters in this film, like everyone does such a good job of making you empathize with them.
And I think that kind of comes back to the stepmother scene and Natalie, you laid it out very beautifully about how addiction does, because it was what I was going to say and then you went before me. But,
did you read his notes?
I think I think it does a very good job of showing how addiction does affect, I mean, because in a sense, Steve Carell lost his son, but she lost her husband to it in a sense because his whole life he's been, or not his whole life, but that during the whole experience,
he's consumed by it.
He pays less attention to her, pays less attention to their kids, to their family.
So I mean, it just it's great that it did draw attention to that issue as well. I could have used a little bit more between Steve Carell and his first wife. What happened there?
Yeah, I was curious what happened there. I mean, it still didn't seem good.
Nothing else to say there, but what happened?
So I actually have a note about that because I've mentioned this already, but like when I see him, I think Michael Scott in The Office. And this woman that played his ex-wife in the film, who has also played his wife on The Office, like added to that for me. I was like, what? Why? Like of all the actresses that could have played opposite
It's a little hard because this character is not Michael Scott at all, so it's kind of hard to see them together. I mean, they weren't together for a long time because
but just
they're
the
on
fact
the
that
phone.
they were in
but
it together, playing that role of like husband and wife. I mean,
I know Timothy was a huge fan of The Office, so he loved the idea that they were playing his parents.
That's really
I'm sure
cute.
that's why they said it.
That's so cute.
Was that the trivia?
That was not the trivia. Even though we didn't do the trivia.
Natalie, do you have any trivia for us this movie?
I do. One thing that I thought was interesting and I think just kind of continues with Timothy's commitment to the roles he is cast in is he lost 25 pounds to
Which he did
play,
not have to
which
lose.
he really did not have to lose.
No.
He went from 125 to 100.
So, I think that was a deep, because they could have just, used makeup and stuff. He didn't really have to do that. That's a lot to put on a young man's already thin frame.
Yeah.
Well, if he wants to get anywhere in this town, he's got to
learn how to do that.
Yeah, I mean, look at Christian Bale.
Yeah, up and down, up and down.
My God.
He's gonna have a heart attack one day. I
Oh,
don't
yeah,
know how
that
his
is
body's
not be good
From
for you.
winning
his
so many
internal
Oscars,
organs cannot
No.
stand that.
Especially after Vice. Oh my God.
Yeah, and he looks normal now. Looks
know.
normal again.
I know. I don't know
Did
how
you
he does
think he
that.
wore any kind of suit?
No, he got
No,
that
he
fat.
gained like 45 pounds.
I think way more than 45 pounds.
more than
That is
I'm
way
convinced
more
toward
than
the end of that
45
movie it was actually Dick Cheney that was performing. It was so real. It was so weird.
But we digress.
We digress.
Yeah, we do digress.
All right. Anything else you guys want to add to what we should be watching? What stood out for you?
I mean, Timothy, for sure, I think is a huge actor that is going to be around for a really long time. Like, I think he's...
They agree with you outside.
Yeah, they do.
I mean, he's just setting off alarms left and right. I mean, it's really just he is
he's
a
the
force.
coolest kid ever.
But much to my criticism, he is a force to be reckoned with right now in Hollywood. So it should be interesting to see how his career plays out. And
Yeah, I really do. It's kind of fun to be a part of, watching movies and seeing new actors kind of come up where I guess I've always grew up really admiring like the older actors and, Harrison Ford and all of these people.
Oh,
And I think
geez, here we
Leo...
You like Harrison Ford, Natalie?
I love Harrison.
I had no idea.
Here
You know
we
that I
go.
saw him at a Baja Fresh once? Have I told you this story?
Yes, you did.
Baja Fresh in Brentwood. He likes to eat there by
Yeah,
himself.
he lives in Brentwood because I saw him at the dog park there.
Interesting.
Anyways.
I think Leo was probably the only one close to my age, but everybody kind of always was an older, like I grew up watching them, and then they've kind of just been the only ones that have been the big male stars. Like nobody really new has come in and like kicked any of these guys out of here. It's always been Brad Pitt. It's always been, Johnny Depp. It's always been these same guys for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
So to see like a new kid come up that's younger, and I'm like, oh shit.
And that has like the
this is-
star quality. Because I think for me, like
Yeah.
everybody right now feels like they're just famous for being famous, and like you were on YouTube or something, and now you're an actor. And it's like he genuinely like started in films that he was really good in, and he has that star quality, and you're seeing him like come up in the ranks. And that to me, like,
Well, and to
your
actually
point, is
have
exciting.
like the range and the
Totally.
ability to play
And
a
he's
lot of these
legit
different
talented.
roles, for sure. So I think it's really fun to see
range from
range.
from young
Ranger.
boy to young boy. I'm confused. Young
because-
angsty teen to angsty drug addicted teen. I mean, look at the range that Timothy has.
Yeah.
I need to see him. I need to see him in a Marvel movie to see what he
what kind
really
of range.
can do.
That's what
Great.
you're really capable of, I think, if you can do a Marvel movie.
I want to see him in a comedy.
No,
I want to see him in a comedy.
Comedy.
He's supposed to be in a remake of Dune. I don't know if you guys know
Yes,
what that
I
is.
saw
talked about
that.
It's like an old Kyle MacLachlan role.
Yes.
And then he's playing King. He's playing a king something in a movie that's coming out. I think it's called The King this year. I don't know what king he's playing, but that could potentially
sway my opinion.
give you something to work with.
And I agree with whoever said this earlier about wanting to see Steve Carell. I think it was you, Sean, that was like wanting to buy into Steve Carell as like a dramatic actor because you do believe in it, but you're not totally there yet.
I want to. Like,
You want.
yeah.
I do want to. Watch The Office like 10 times every episode. Like I just love that show.
Yeah, it's a good show.
He for sure is Michael Scott, but I do buy into the fact that he has abilities beyond Michael Scott, that he could do other things. Nothing has totally hit it yet. Well, I guess the way back, I loved him
And I
in
was
because
gonna
he
say,
was very
even
different.
before that, Crazy Stupid Love.
Crazy
he
Stupid
won me
Love.
in
He
that.
was, oh my God.
And
he
that's
was
why I was like,
amazing in
I
that.
was on a path of this.
But he still was pretty Steve Carell
But he's
in
good.
that.
He's still not Carell-y. He's just different.
Yeah. Whereas
And
way,
then
way
way
back,
back,
he was
he
like,
was a
he was a
dick.
dick.
And
there
I
was
liked him
no
in that.
part of him that,
and I would
that
say-
was fun. It was great to see him in that.
And I would say that's why I'm like, okay, that's fine, let's do this. But then you start getting to be this thing that you're doing, and it's like, where's the acting?
Well, how did you guys feel about him in movies like
Vice.
The Big Short or Vice?
So Vice is the
yeah,
one
I
was
liked
gonna
him in
say.
both of them.
I
But
enjoyed his
I
performance in
I
Vice.
didn't think he was anything like Michael Scott in any of those.
It's
films.
not that he is.
Vice,
It's
I
not that
did.
he is being Michael Scott. I think
No.
he's so embedded in my brain as Michael Scott that it's my problem, not necessarily
Well, I don't
his.
even watch The Office,
did
so
you-
I have no idea who Michael Scott is, guys. You guys keep saying that, and I'm like, I don't know.
So why don't you like him though? Like, what's your reason for not liking him?
Because he gets to be too Corelli. Like, I liked him when we just, like, no.
Oh,
even in
yeah,
Vice.
thanks.
Oh, that's the thing.
He's just, I don't know, maybe it's his voice. I just can't
I
get
think
over
he
it.
has.
And he gets
He's a
high
little
pitch.
squirrely
He
or
gets a little
something,
high
right?
pitch.
Yeah.
Like even in Beautiful Boy, he starts talking, and I'm like, I just can't.
It's that constipation
Like,
coming back.
So
Like you ate a mouse.
I feel like we talked about this in A Star Is Born, where Lady Gaga, when she's singing, it's hard for her not to be Lady Gaga while she's singing. So there's a certain quality and tone in his
she
voice.
takes a turn.
Yeah, that I can't remove the Lady Gaga memory in my brain to be in this character. So, and I think because I personally feel like I know Steve Carell and Michael Scott so well.
Yeah.
It's so hard for me when he sounds like Steve Carell or Michael Scott or any of that, which
Like if there's
that's-
even a hint of it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
it's
I
a
was
hint,
okay with the
just be-
hint
yeah.
in Crazy Stupid Love.
Yeah.
Way back, there was no hint.
Yeah.
And I liked that. And so I was expecting those to keep
Yeah.
to keep happening. But then it's
But like Vice and Donald Rumsfeld, he's like really, he like
doing
laughs a lot
But
and
you know
kind
what
of
I'm
laughs
saying.
a little bit like my. Oh, I'm just
Right.
like, oh shit.
I'm not making,
I'm
like,
seeing those
you
things.
get what I'm saying,
Yeah,
though.
I
Like,
get
Did you
it.
guys
Okay.
Did you guys see Cafe Society?
No.
Neither
Was
did
he
I.
in that?
I was just wondering. I was hoping somebody did.
Like over there on IMDb, you're like, what else was he? What else could we potentially throw on?
No.
No. What was the other?
And they were like, "Oh, did you see it?" No.
Wait, what was? So it was Vice. Oh, The Big Short.
The Big Short.
Still, yeah, because there's parts of that character that were very like exaggerated. That feels like Steve Carell. Like, so it's hard to separate in my mind.
I can't remember him though.
He just has that, like, in that scene, like I was saying, he just has that, he has this, like, his despair face and that sound that comes out of his, it just, I mean, but that's who he is. So, maybe.
It's who he is. We can't change who we are.
Well, he's
All right.
doing an untitled morning show drama now.
Oh, I could see him as
Steve
a
Carell.
talk show host.
Yeah,
Like a
which
morning-
sense for
is
him.
only more.
Yeah, Michael Scott. Okay. And scene. All right, guys, let's give our martini scores. Natalie, why don't you tell us what the Martini Scale is?
Okay, so the Martini Scale, it's a reverse star system. So, greatest movies out there are 5 stars, but to us, it's only 1 martini because we love this movie. We can watch it sober, so it's very easy to get through. 2 martinis, it's not bad. A second martini would make this movie even better. 3 martinis, it's enjoyable, but the booze is required. 4 martinis, I've lost count of the drinks I've had. What movie am I even watching? 5 martinis, these martinis better be bottomless because I'm going to need to constantly be drunk to watch this movie again.
Bottomless martinis. There's a concept for a restaurant.
That is a great
If you're
idea.
listening, Los
We'd have
Angeles.
to take everybody's keys. Or it's like an Uber only place.
yeah.
So having said that, Natalie, what was your martini score for this film?
I would say, I will say, this is rough. It was a really hard movie to get through because it's emotionally exhausting.
Yeah.
But I still really liked it. I have dealt with addiction issues with people that I've known, and so and I haven't been this close to it, so to be able to get a closer view of it from this movie I think was really important because, again, like I said, watching Intervention, watching certain things and conversations I've had with people, it's really easy to give an idea of what you think is how people should handle this situation. So this was a really educational movie for me to watch, to realize okay, I don't always have the answers, and I need to be aware that this is just a really fucking hard thing to deal with, and there's really kind of almost no right answer to a lot of these situations. So I would do 2 martinis. It was a really good movie. I don't know. I don't want to watch it again, but it was a good movie. So if somebody made me watch it again, I would definitely require 2 martinis to sit through it.
Interesting. Lena?
This is hard for me too, because especially just hearing you say that. I wanted to say at first a 4.5 because it's a very hard movie to watch, but I feel like it's more hard because of the content, not because I needed martinis to get through it. Just hard watching it. But I definitely don't need to see this movie again. Or I don't really want to see the movie again. So I guess I'm going to go with a 3.5 now because I definitely do. If I had to watch it again, I would need martinis. Mm-hmm. That's what I think.
Sean?
Honestly, there's not enough martinis to get me to watch this movie again. I would actually need some heroin to watch this movie.
My God.
So that's my score.
Really?
As much as I love
You would do 5 martinis.
Timothy,
This is a 5 martini movie.
This is a 5 martini movie. As much as I love Timothy, I just don't ever need to see this again. There wasn't something where I was like, oh, I'd like to go back and revisit. No. I
Do you
saw
not think
it.
that this is an important film for people to see, or a subject matter that we should be talking about, or
I think it's
a part of it that we should be shining a light on? That's where I feel like it's a good. I'm glad it was made.
It's definitely all of those things.
Yeah.
I won't discredit that. For me personally, I don't ever need to see this movie again. Like, I saw it once. I think this movie has been made before to some extent. Like, I think movies about drug addiction tend to have a consistent through line in them that I think you could watch one and get the same thing out of that you would this movie. Like The Basketball Diaries is a perfect example. That movie's 20 some years old, but like I think you probably walk away feeling very similarly. Maybe not like the father, like the family struggle,
father-son dynamic
but
felt
there have
very
definitely
new.
been family dynamic struggles in a drug addiction or an alcoholism, like the Meg Ryan movie. What was the When a Man Loves a Woman back in the 90s? Like, anyway, I'm just saying that like this theme has been done before. I'm not like they didn't reinvent the wheel. It was done well. I just don't need to watch it again.
Okay, Jahan?
I'm actually going to go in the opposite direction. I think this is a 0 martini movie because if anybody has addiction issues, they shouldn't even be near alcohol. If you need help, you should reach out.
Virgin martini.
I actually, I mean, again, I'm going to give it a 1 martini because I just don't think this is a movie you should be on alcohol at all to watch. And it was not something that, for me, it's something I would not watch drinking.
Really?
I mean, I felt the urge to become completely sober afterwards. And
Yeah, seriously. I threw all the alcohol bottles away when
I think if I was drunk for this movie, I'd feel really guilty about myself. But in all seriousness, I think it's somewhere between a 1 and a 2 martini because I did enjoy the movie. I thought it was very powerful. I thought the acting was strong. I mean, I thought the directing was okay. The editing was okay, but I think it was a little bit snubbed on the awards front in terms of the picture itself. I mean, the actors obviously are getting some credit where it's deserved. I think overall, it was a pretty good movie. Would I watch it again? Obviously not. It's very heavy, as we've all agreed. But I think it was a good movie.
I actually think this film flew under the radar for a lot of people. Like, I think there's a lot of people that did not know it existed. I was actually talking to someone the other day that said they were a Timothée Chalamet fan. And I was like, oh, did you see Beautiful Boy? And they're like, what's that? So, like, I don't think it's gotten enough exposure.
Did someone just walk up to you on the street and was like, I'm a Timothée Chalamet?
Totally.
He was wearing a shirt?
I just was wearing my Timothée Chalamet t-shirt.
Well, I think so. I've seen this a little bit where it's
Lena
like
has one now.
there's movies that are released, I think, completely intended to go down this award season path of like being nominated for things and a limited release, then it's eventually released wide, whatever it is. And I think sometimes when movies start the ball a little too early,
Which this came out like August or September.
it came out in October.
Oh, did it?
So
Okay.
to me, that's a little too early in the Oscar game. People aren't really ready. There's
It's almost like you're
Halloween
admitting
movies
defeat.
and almost where it's like, why aren't you being released on Christmas Day with the others and then expanding in January? That's kind of more.
This would be a great Christmas film. Take your family. If you don't want your kids to do drugs, take them to see Beautiful Boy on Christmas.
If your kids come home this Christmas, take them to see Beautiful Boy.
Check their backpacks.
Oh my God. Oh, we didn't even talk about when he made him take the pee test. I was mortified. Do you guys remember that?
I think the podcast was fine without that discussion.
I was so sad for him. I was like, just trust him. It was devastating.
Why, though? He had every reason not to trust him.
No, because then you're going to send him back. See, again, it's all of these things that you think are like the right way to do things, and it's just going to, all of it's going to blow up in your face. Because drugs are bad, kids.
And this is why none of us are ever having
Don't do
Just do the legal drugs.
And a few of the illegal ones.
And that depends on which state you live in, because some of them are not legal in certain
true.
states. So don't do drugs at all, kids.
Sorry.
We should just not put any of this.
Sorry for those states.
Kids also don't listen to this podcast.
Let's hope not.
Okay.
Does anybody listen to this podcast?
Natalie, that will be edited out. Mark my words.
Why?
Be positive.
Ooh.
Well, thank you guys so much for having me.
Yeah,
once again.
thanks for joining us again.
We're so happy you came back.
Thank you.
It was fun.
I felt like you never left.
It feels like you're just here. It's so weird.
We know you're so fun.
As always, we want to thank you for listening. For more information, please be sure to visit themartiniscale.com, where you can find links for all of our social channels in addition to show notes and more.
If you haven't already, please head over to Apple Podcast and rate and review us. It helps others discover the show.
We'll see you next time.
Cheers! Bye!